Jason. Meantime, the deadline for an agreement on a regional water authority is just a little over a week away, but it still faces some major hurdles. Oakland County Executive L. Brooks Patterson says he is not yet sold on the deal, and Macomb County Executive Mark Hackel has been an outspoken critic of the closed-door negotiations. Plus, there's talk that Highland Park could be dissolved so that its huge water bill could be spread out among other customers. There's a lot of facets to this story. And Nolan, I'm going to start with you because Mark Hackel has been on a tear now since we've seen him up at Mackinac, angry about the closed-door meetings about this, and he was actually left out of a meeting this week.
And that's, and he's absolutely right. He's on a six-day rampage, and he has every right to be. And the story this week, I think, is that secret meeting and this ongoing gag order. A year ago, these folks signed a memorandum of understanding that created a government body, that created this Great Lakes Regional Water Authority to make the sort of decisions for implementing this agreement. And instead of allowing that authority to do its job, Sean Cox, federal judge, keeps pulling them into secret meetings to do it in the dark.
But he has the authority to do that.
He has the authority, correct? That does not mean it's the right thing to do. A federal judge has broad authority, but that does not mean it's the right thing to do. This is a subversion of the democratic process. It really bumps up hard against the Open Meetings Act. You've got an appointed board that he charged, that this agreement charged with doing this kind of work.
Well, but it's
and
not
now
the board
every time
that's
they hit it,
meeting. It's not the board that's meeting. It's the executors of the board.
I understand that. It should be it's the appointees of the board. But
right.
It should be the board that is working out this detail, and it should be done in the sunlight. These secret meetings where they go in and say, oh, no, that's not what they talked about. It gives them cover to lie. It gives them cover to not be accountable for their decisions. And at the end, they're going to spring it on their appointed board. They're going to spring it on the taxpayers and the county commissions and say, you got 2 days to sign this. I think Hackel is dead right that this should be done out in the open. There should be transparency, and this gag order is no longer relevant, and it should be lifted.
Are you as irritated by this gag order as Nolan is?
I'm not. I think that when you're in federal court, you're trying to sort of negotiate through the outlines of governance. It's not that unusual that he's saying, look, don't be out talking about what we're talking about before we come up with a plan. That happens all the time in federal court. They came up with a plan
a year ago.
But the dimensions of that plan keep changing, and then my understanding is that that's what they're talking about, is how will this work itself out?
But that's what this board was appointed to do. That's why it was appointed. And instead of allowing this board to do its work, they're taking it into the judge's chamber whenever they hit a roadblock. You have to have some transparency in this process. This is a very important public resource that they're dealing with, and people are going to be asked to make a decision.
That I agree with.
So Hackel is right. He's got a constituency that he has to answer.
Well, he's also grandstanding.
I don't think so.
He's also trying to make it clear that he doesn't think Macomb's going to come out much of a winner in this deal. He's probably right, and the truth is nobody is. This is a big enough mess that the region has created over the last 30 years that everyone's going to have to swallow a bit of the bad part of this, and that means higher rates. That's going to mean loss of control for some jurisdictions. It's just what we got to do.
But Steve, that's why, because it's going to be so impactful, and because it's going to upset so many people and has the potential of really changing the way we get our water and how we pay for it and what have you, that's why it should be as transparent as absolutely possible, because people now, when it's done in secret, when it's done behind doors, they feel like they're in there screwing us, and boom,
Let me ask this, though. What does this do in terms of the whole regional cooperation? Because this is a massive deal, and when you have such conflict between some of the major players here, what does this mean for, I guess, working together and going forward between Hackel, Patterson, Duggan, and Evans?
Well, I think there's no question there's some tensions and some new tensions that have come out in this process, but I think that was inevitable.
Might have been intentional.
Or it might have been intentional, I suppose. The truth is that for too long, suburban interests have talked about regional cooperation only when it doesn't conflict with their interests. Brooks Patterson has actually said that he's all for regional cooperation, except when it doesn't benefit Oakland, which is exactly the opposite of the way that it's
when it hurts Oakland. He said except when it hurts Oakland.
But sometimes
that's a legitimate position.
Well, it's actually not. I mean, that's not a regional position. It's not a regional approach. The truth is, there are some things that have to be better, that will be better for the region, that may ask for a sacrifice or an inconvenience from one of the players.
But those players are always the suburban players, and that's
not true. Detroit's always on
point.
But Detroit's often on the short end of the stick, has been since the 60s, with federal policy and state policy that is designed to, deplete the population and the economic resources here and shift them to the suburbs.
There's no reason regional cooperation has to mean either party gets short shrifted, and that's what Brooks has fought for over the years. Is let's make sure, and that's what they're fighting for in this water deal.
But this water deal is a good example.
Okay.
I mean. Everybody is responsible for things being the way they are, right? Everyone is going to have to pay more. It's not necessarily in Oakland's interest or people in Oakland to do that. It's a sacrifice.
Then be upfront about that. Don't sign a memo. What they did a year ago, sign an MOU that said we're going to cap rates at 4%. That was bold.
But they are capping them at 4%
now.
Okay, but they are capped at 4%. It's the local communities that add on to that 4%, and that's not the fault of the system.
Is not going to go at 4%. You can't do what needs to be done, and that's Hackle's point. Is let's just be truthful about the impact. They're changing this agreement on the fly.
They are changing,
and they're doing it behind closed doors. The appointed board has no clue what's going on. This is not how the democratic process should work.
Before we leave the water conversation, I want to touch briefly on Highland Park and the reports that were floated out there, the potential of dissolving the city because of how much they owe about the water department. Yeah. What do you know about that?
Well, I mean, I don't see how that works. A federal judge does not have the authority to dissolve a municipality under the Michigan Constitution. There's just no mechanism for that to happen. In fact, the state of Michigan doesn't really have much of a mechanism to dissolve a municipality. The question would be, where do these people go? The people who live in Highland Park, would they just become citizens of Detroit? Detroit would have some say in that. I mean, I think that's a threat that's out there to try to move some parties off of the position that they're in, but I don't think it's a very realistic option.
All right, last word on this, Nolan.
Well, I don't know that it's a realistic option or an option they're wed to, but I know it was floated and put on the table probably as a means of moving Hackle and Patterson toward an agreement to show them that there's no way to get out from under this $25 million Highland Park debt, but that debt remains the sticking point, and that's what that meeting was about Monday, despite what they came out and said publicly.